And good evening, everyone. Welcome to Election Night 2010. My name is Mark Heisted. I'll be your host for this evening's coverage of what will likely be both an interesting and an important election. Tonight's broadcast is coming to you through the joint efforts of the Morningside Student Radio Station, KMSC Fusion 93, and Morningside Television, MCTV, on Cable Channel 12 in Sioux City. We have a large number of student broadcasters with us tonight, some political science students, some plain old political junkies who are students, and a couple of political junkies who are members of the Morningside faculty. All of these folks on hand tonight to bring you comprehensive coverage of Election Night 2010. You're tuned to the student radio voice of Morningside College. This is KMSC Sioux City. This is Election Night 2010 on KMSC and MCTV. I'm Mark Heisted. I am your host for the evening. We'll be here till midnight tonight as we follow the election returns as they come in. I am joined this hour by Kitty Green from the History and Political Science Department at Morningside College, and also Patrick McKinley from the same department. Although I have a historian on my left and a political scientist on my right, but we can all get along together, I think. We're going to be headed back to Abby Bull in the newsroom to get another tally as they are starting to count the votes for those states that closed their polls here at 8 o'clock just a moment ago. But I had forecast in the last hour that I wanted to have a good conversation with you folks about the Tea Party. Let me ask this of both of you. Kitty, I'm going to hit up you first. Do you have a sense of what the Tea Party is yet? They've been around for about a year. Do we know who they are, what they are? Are they a coherent thing?
Well, no, they're not coherent, because coherent would require a leadership that you could identify. So one of the things that is most interesting, I think, be on the other side of the political spectrum, but your tactics are very similar. So I find it interesting in that they imagine themselves kind of conservative, using very interesting kind of in-the-street kind of tactics all the time. I find it very interesting to watch kind of a group of them together.
Patrick, what's your take on this Tea Party phenomenon?
Well, the other thing that I think goes to Kitty's point about coherence is that thus far, and again, I think only one of these races has been called, although perhaps we'll get this report from the TV room, but I'm pretty sure Chris Coons has won in Delaware, but it appears that Ron Paul has won in Kentucky. And so you have two very different outcomes. Which Tea Party is it?
I read a study, in fact, it was a poll that came out a week and a half ago of some 1,700 people who identified as Tea Partiers, which, as polling goes, is a pretty good number in terms of the sample. And what the poll was finding is the fastest growing group within the Tea Party were those who identified themselves with the religious right. And at the same time, those who identified themselves in a more libertarian right framework were starting to fall away. Are we seeing a shift in the mix of folks, do you think, who are involved in this?
Or is that an older divide that continues to resurface in what in the Republican camp of how do you hold together kind of socially liberal but fiscally conservative libertarian viewpoints about, well, you know, let's chuck Social Security and chuck unemployment insurance and let's have self-reliance, versus groups that think that the nation's on a track of moral turpitude and needs to shift or and those are two very powerful but very different stories.
We're going to get back to this throughout the evening because the conversation about the Tea Party is not over, but I want to get to the newsroom here pretty quickly because at this point in the evening, we have now started to get some numbers from those states where the polls closed at 8 o'clock. So let's bring Abby Bull in from the newsroom. And Abby, let's get to that tally.
So far for Kentucky, we have Democrat John Conway at 45% and Republican Rand Paul at 55%. The percentage of precincts reporting is 72%. As for Kentucky House District 6, Ben Chandler, Democrat, current incumbent, is 50% and tied with Republican Andy Barr at 50%. And the percentage of precincts reporting is 94%. As for Indiana House District 2, Joe Donnelly, the incumbent right now, is at 48%, while Jack Walorski is at 47%, and the percentage of precincts reporting is 84%. House District number 9 for Indiana has Democrat Barron Hill at 40% and Republican Todd Young winning so far with 55%, and the percentage of precincts reporting is 71%.
And so as we look at the returns tonight, these are the only polls that matter.
Right. And it is nice that tonight we can stop talking about polls and start talking about real election returns. You're listening to Election Night 2010, coming to you on KMSC Fusion 93. If you're in the Sioux City area and have cable, you can tune over to cable channel 12, and we're giving you television coverage of a radio broadcast. We are also streaming tonight, both audio and video, on the World Wide Web. And so as long as we have been doing these election night broadcasts, Patrick, we've never tried anything quite like this before.
No, we have quite a combination of technology coming together here, Mark. It's pretty extraordinary.
It's technology coming together. It's different departments on campus coming together, all in the service of, first off, informing you of what's going on with the elections as we receive the returns tonight. But also, this is such an outstanding experience for our Morningside broadcasting and political science students to be able to be involved in a production like this. So here is Jack Bush out and about talking with voters earlier today.
Did you vote today?
No, I haven't yet, but I'm going to.
We've got a few TV stations and a few radio stations here. We're waiting for Pat Gill and his main person, Vicki, to come back. I know they're out troubleshooting some voting issues out in the community. And so when they're back, we're going to do a quick interview with them. But
Ryan, are you with us? Okay, clearly we have lost Ryan. This first hour of the broadcast every 2 years is just so much fun as the students are being thrown some technical issues that they had never contemplated in their entire Morningside career. And now we've got Ryan Tellinghusen with us. Ryan, what are you hearing from the voters tonight? Okay. Clearly we can hear him, but he can't hear us yet.
I can hear you.
Okay, Ryan, there you are. What are you hearing from the voters tonight?
Well, it's there aren't a whole bunch of people here right now, but when we first got here, me and Preston first got here, there was this line out the door, and I got a couple of talked to a couple of people. They're wanting to make their opinion heard. They're feeling very encouraged to come out and just make their opinion heard to try and bring about some change.
So you're feeling like these are motivated voters you've been talking to tonight? Yeah,
well, I did get a chance to talk to a couple of motivated people, but I mean, actually though, the general tone here is is pretty quiet, just a lot more just business, like they're coming in just voting, and they're getting out. I mean, there have been a couple of people in the line just chattering to themselves, but other than that, it's basically very business-like down here.
But on top of the Tea Party, easily the number one issue in this year's election has been the economy. We keep hearing it over and over and over again. We sent out KMSC's Miranda Christian to talk with Tom Swanky, who's one of the economists on the Morningside campus, and talked with what Tom thought about how the economy would affect the election.
How is the economy right now?
Right now, we're in what's called a recession, which means that average business activity has gone down, and that usually creates people who lose their job and firms that go out of business. This is thought to be bad because then they don't have livelihood, and it starts to echo on to other people. Because when I lose my job, I don't buy, and the companies I used to buy from, they don't have as much revenue, and they have to lay people off. So it starts small and gets bigger.
How will the economy affect the election this year?
I think it will either energize people who are mad about what's happening or make people really depressed because they feel like they can't do anything with their own life. How can they change the political? And I think we see that in both parties. The people who are most energized and angry about it are right now the right wing, the Republicans, because they aren't used to having so many big, ugly numbers of how much we're doing. But conversely, a lot of the Democrats who were really energized for Obama, they're like, how could it be so bad? And they're not feeling up to voting. So I think it has different effects on different groups.